Artemus Toast here, and this is upload 2 in my underrated and underappreciated, art. Oh man, artist playlist. The first one, as you probably know, was Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits. Who I feel is underrated and appreciated. To most of the music world. I mean, obviously guitarists know him. The next instrumentalist I'm doing is Chris Squire of the wonderful prog rock band Yes. You know Unfortunately, the great Chris Squire passed away last year. You know in my opinion, it didn't you know, send as large of a ripple through the music world as I feel it should have. Which is why I feel that Chris Squire is underrated and underappreciated. You know, when you typically talk about, rock bassists, there's a lot of names that keep coming up. I did a top one list. You get mentions of Flea and Les Claypool and John Paul Jones and Geddy Lee, Paul McCartney, and Chris Squire's name. I mean, hopefully, shows up on those lists, But once again, being the bassist for, such a great progressive rock band such as Yes, usually when you think prog rock and bass, I mean, in my opinion, I feel that people's minds automatically, turn to Geddy Lee of the Rush. Understandable. I'm in no way taken away from Geddy Lee is a brilliant musician. But once again, back to Chris Squire. The fact that he passed away last year and shortly thereafter there were a lot of hard hits to the music world. And forgive me, I can't remember the exact date. But when you have the likes of Scott Weiland and David Bowie and the Purple One Prince, dying within a similar or within the same 12 months, unfortunately that kind of once again, in my opinion, took away from the legacy that the great Chris Squire had built. Not only with Yes, his solo work. He was also known as Fish. And his solo work followed that. Like Fish Out of Water, great album, really showcases a lot of his amazing skill on the bass. There's a lot of he played a Rickenbacker, and he had a very distinct playing style and a very distinct tone as well. He almost had a regular, like a 6-string guitar tone. And he played it like a lead. On a lot of Yes tracks and a lot of, I mean, obviously his solo work as well. You'll find that it doesn't lend itself to the background as much as it is to the forefront of the piece. He it's my understanding that he used to split the high and lows of his bass tone. So he was able to adjust those separately, or sometime, and then they would, he kind of did like a crossover with them, once they came out of his Rickenbacker bass. I'm pretty sure that's what he played. And forgive me. Yeah, he played a Rickenbacker bass, iconic bass in itself. But he was able to get this really great tone out of it by basically, crossing over the tones, splitting the highs and lows, being able to adjust them separately. Like if he wanted a fuzz box on a low, and he wanted clean on the high, he separated the tones preamp, so he was able to do that, which allowed for his very like noticeable tone. There's a lot of, much like guitarists, there's a lot of bassists as well. You may have never heard the song before in your life, but you'll recognize the tone right off the bat, and also the playing style. I mean, Les Claypool's a great example of that. His slap style. I mean, you could pick it out a mile away. Same thing with Flea. The way he plays. John Paul Jones and Geddy Lee. A lot of these bassists are, not only through tone, but the style. You could pick them out of any track that they're playing on, any song that they're playing on. Chris Squire, has one of those legendary. Bass tones as well, coupled with his lead playing style and having a more upfront, placement in the yes tracks, really are those, defining, I guess, signatures of Chris Squire's bass tone. It's a culmination of all those things. And if, I highly, I did a All Kinds of Awesome trademark album review of Fragile, which, I happen to be on the cover of. Well, you could watch the video to find out about that. But once again, I had to go back to this, but yes, Fragile is the album that, for me personally, the first time I heard around about, decades, ago, I immediately focused on that bass tone and that playing style, and I immediately had to know more about, the great bassist, who was Chris Squire. But once again, I highly recommend listening to not only, the works of Yes. Chris Squire was a founding member of the great prog rock band Yes. All Kinds of Awesome, trademark prog rock band Yes. Also his solo works, on the YouTubes, the Apple Store, highly recommend, listening to it. If you're a fan of say more recently, bands such as Tool, bands such as Rush, or just prog rock bands in general. If you haven't heard Yes, or if you have heard Yes, I highly recommend you become more familiar with their bassist, Chris Squire, the late great Chris Squire. Follow me on the Twitters. Artemus Toast out.